If you enjoy our work, consider making a donation to mixtapestories.net or at Patreon/mixtapestories, all one word. Thank you. Mixtape Stories, creating beautiful fiction in a disappointing timeline.
The following contains spoilers for Dies the Fire. It's 2004. The BlackBerry is the hottest new tech. A majority of Americans still think it's a good idea to go into Iraq. And J.J. Abrams' new series Lost promises that it won't suck in the years to come. And SM Stirling publishes Dies the Fire, answering the question all of us alternate history nerds have been asking. What happens to the rest of the world in the Nantucket series? Nantucket series? What are you talking about? Wait, who are you? And how in the hell did I end up in this timeline? Okay, relax. I can answer the first question. So SM Stirling had this time travel trilogy, the Nantucket series, where the island of Nantucket from 1998 was transported back to the Bronze Age. How did such a thing happen? Really doesn't matter. Stirling used an alien magic wand, like literally. Some extraterrestrial artist did a composition that caused Nantucket to go back in time. Alright, satisfied? So, nerds like me are banging down SM Stirling's door wanting to learn what happened to the rest of the world that Nantucket left behind. Having had enough of our crying, he decided to answer that question with the first book in the Emberverse series entitled Dies the Fire. So here's the gist. It's 1998. Matchbox 20's success has signaled the death knell of legitimate alternative rock. Bill Clinton did not have sexual relations with that girl, and Deep Impact is battling out with Armageddon at the box office. Meanwhile, strange things are afoot. The wealthy Larson family from Portland, Oregon are on a Buddy Holly prop plane taking a trip to Idaho for some unknown reason, flown by the handsome former Marine Mike Havel. They're listening to the radio that has a news report about some odd lightning over Nantucket. And then suddenly, everyone on the plane feels this incredible pain and blinding light. The plane's engines cut off, along with all the instruments, and Mike Havel has to land this plane in the bush of Idaho. Meanwhile, in Corvallis, Oregon, Juniper McKenzie is playing some Scottish music at a bar when suddenly the power goes out and they feel the same immense pain and bright light. At first it seems like a typical power outage combined with a collective migraine, but it quickly becomes apparent that shit's gotten weird. A few cars driving when the collective migraine power outage happened also lose power. In fact, all of the vehicles on the road cease to operate. Meanwhile, a few miles north up in Portland, the dream of the 90s really is alive in Portland because it's 1998. And here too, everyone, the baristas, the bookstore owners, the banjo players, everyone in Portland experiences the same migraine and power outage, and that nothing, absolutely nothing functions. Portland is in chaos. It's even worse than that time when the city accidentally drank decaf and the bike messengers went straight edge for a month. Arcing back a few miles over in Corvallis, Juniper and her teenage daughter Eilear witness some hoodlums breaking into a store. Things escalate. A gangbanger and a cop pull out their firearms and fire at each other, except neither gun goes off. And this is the moment where we learn that this is not your garden variety apocalypse. Right up until that moment, I had assumed that this was just an EMP. A electromagnetic pulse that fries every microcircuit connected to a power source. But it's not an EMP, and it wasn't just those guns. Later in the book, we're going to learn that it's not just even all guns. It's all rapid combustion. That includes steam engines. It's as though the laws of physics itself were ever so slightly altered to make fast combustion and the electricity through metal impossible. Lightning in the sky still strikes. We're bioelectric and we're still alive. And beyond the Earth, the sun still does its fusion thing. So whatever this thing is, well, it's impossible. Like some crazed alien bat doing an art project. But we're not meant to focus on what caused the change, as the catastrophic events will be called. What is important to know is that our entire post-industrial electrified civilization has suddenly gone dark. No more electricity. The water pressure is done. Cars no longer go vroom. And planes fall from the sky. Speaking of planes falling from the sky, Mike Havel, the bush pilot, crash lands the plane in a lake in Idaho. And the Larson family survives, but they have a long trek back to Portland. And as you would expect being in Idaho during the apocalypse, the Larson family runs into a group of white supremacist survivalists who are living their best life, enslaving a black family and generally raping and pillaging their way around. Mike Havel teams up with Will Hutton, the father of one of the black families, and together they totally Team America the white supremacists to death. But unfortunately, Mama Larson is mortally wounded, and Daddy Kenneth Larson is injured. The Larson and Hutton families, along with a few others led by Mike Havel, form a group to trek back to Oregon, and Ken Larson is thinking that instead of Portland, maybe they should go to one of his bucolic estates in the Willamette Valley. The location isn't spelled out, but I'm thinking maybe it's not too far away from Tillamook. You know, where you can get the good cheese and ice cream, but not exactly there. Along the way, younger daughter Astrid, who's like really into The Lord of the Rings, even though the movie doesn't come out until 2001 in our timeline, but never mind that, because she has a bow and arrows, pisses off a giant black bear, and they struggle, and Mike Havel kills it with his puko knife. As they continue on to the estate, the crew gathers other wanderers, and they start to be able to pick and choose who's going to join them, and they get this reputation for being like real badasses, not only because they killed some bad guys, but also they killed this bear, and they become known as the Bear Killers. Meanwhile, our Scottish bard Juniper and daughter Eilear, who are Wiccans belonging to a coven, head to a cabin that she inherited that's located southeast of Corvallis, where her coven meets. Nobody can call each other or drive over there, of course, but she finds the other coven members and they make their way to the Wiccan cabin. Returning back to Portland,
the dream of the 90s is alive
now it's the dream of the 1190s that's alive in Portland. Espresso machines throughout suddenly sputter and stop. So too do the electric tattoo needles. It's a madhouse, I tell you, a madhouse. But there's this one history professor, Norman Arminger, who's ready for this, for he's been an active member of the SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronisms. You know, all those Ren Fair folk.
Circus folk. Nomads, you know. Smell like cabbage. Small hands.
And he's been one of them for years. And he hasn't just been LARPing around with a fake Cockney accent and eating turkey legs. He actually learned how to fight with a sword. In fact, he collected swords and trained on them before the change happened. Incidentally, Professor Arminger befriended some gangbangers before the change as well. It had something to do with a research project that he was doing or whatever. Just go with it because when the change happens, he finds them and he recruits them. His crew captures a chief of police as well as some rival thugs, and he offers that they can fight him with whatever weapons are available. And since guns no longer go pow, and he's a reasonably decent swordsman, which makes him like frickin' Neo in our world, he becomes the Portland equivalent of the Duke of New York, installing himself the Lord Protector of the Portland Protective Association, PPA. Arminger goes full medieval on everyone's ass by anointing certain gang members as dukes and barons and makes some rando priest the pope, and he puts the rest of Portland to work for a change. Sorry, Carrie, no more clown school for you.
I gave up clowning years ago.
But it's not all funnel cakes and games. As you can imagine, a global civilization of over 6 billion people in 1998 was able to exist only on the power of electricity and the internal combustion engine. With no telecommunications, with no way to harvest food on an industrial scale, with no means to refrigerate or transport food, well, there's going to be a massive die-off. Rampant starvation, even cannibalism, takes hold over the next several months. Clan Mackenzie, you remember them, the Wiccans led by Juniper Mackenzie, is making do with a bottomless stew out in the woods east of Corvallis. But the canned food is running out. At some point, they have to go forage for more supplies. And then they're attacked by some bandits, but then they're saved by none other than Mike Havel and the Bear Killers, which sounds a lot like a folk band from Portland if you think about it, but don't, because I'm on a roll here. The two groups share a meal, Juniper and Mike Havel share a sleep sack, and they go their separate ways. The die-off is pretty bad everywhere, but there are communities that survive. You have the Clan Mackenzie, which I believe is situated somewhere around the Belknap Hot Springs area, maybe? That's just a guesstimate. You have the Bear Killers in their new home called Larsdalen outside of Tillamook, and Corvallis is doing pretty well, actually. Which really shouldn't be surprising because Oregon State University has a large agriculture and mechanics department. The town learns to adjust to the new reality, and they erect some good barricades to keep the bandits out. They have an elected committee and an organized division of labor. And where else is functioning? Oh yes, Portland. Thanks to the Portland Protective Association, who've basically enslaved most of the population to work in the farms outside of the city. At some point, Lord Protector Arminger and his PPA goons want more territory, and they try to occupy communities that survive the die-off. One of them, these targeted towns, hire the Bear Killers to liberate their community, and this is where Mike Havel learns of the Protector's plans for expansion. Havel and his Bear Killers enlist the help of Clan Mackenzie and Corvallis. They all fight clumsily in this new kind of battle space. I think I can still say battle space as there's someone who's using a hang glider in the fight, and the good guys prevail. Today. Juniper gives birth to a son, the love child between her and Mike Havel. Mike Havel, for his part, marries the eldest Larson daughter named Sina, and the Protector makes plans for the next encounter against those heathen kids out in the Willamette Valley. Dies the Fire is succeeded in 2005 with the Protector's War, and in 2006 with A Meeting at Corvallis. Set nearly a decade after the change, things have settled into a new normal, kind of like what we're trying to do. While we get a glimpse of life outside of the Willamette Valley with a parallel story in England, the epic remains centered in Oregon. The change itself has been so seismic that the common era is gone. It's replaced by an entirely new calendar. People in the region no longer refer to the year as 2007, the year where the Protector's War picks up in Oregon, but instead it's called Year 9. And you can't blame them. The old world was an entirely different reality. Altogether.
The old world was an entirely different reality.
The laws of physics as they had been known had been altered, making a restoration of the old electrified industrial age part of the irretrievable past. The era leaves behind carcasses of vehicles, highways that are beginning to buckle. The skyscrapers are still standing, but are left unlivable without electricity. And tens of millions of America Online CDs become unused drink coasters, which actually happens here. In this era, places on the map like Florida are considered distant lands, completely cut off. No oranges, no stories of alligators on meth running for governor. There have been some brave explorers in Oregon who traveled to places like California and Seattle. They're all death zones. California I can see with its reliance on the Colorado River, but Seattle? I don't know, maybe the Canadians saw this as their chance. Suffice it to say, the communities in Oregon have it good. I mean, if you're a surf in Portland, it sucks. But if you're part of the Clan Mackenzie, Larsdalen, Corvallis, the Bend, Yakima, and other places, the great shock of the dying of the old world has passed, and people have organic vegetables, free-range chickens where you actually know the name of the chicken being eaten, and the beer is actually fantastic. But there's no fresh coffee available, so I can't go there. I'm not going to go into detail in the follow-up novels, but I'm touching upon the world of Protector's War and a meeting at Corvallis because it's here that Stirling begins to show how his post-apocalyptic story, or POPOC as I call it, greatly differs from the standard POPOCs in two ways. First, he moves from the POPOC subgenre into a fantasy time of legends epic. And second, instead of wallowing in horror and violence, Stirling provides a more realistic account of how humanity would adapt and react. On switching subgenres, we start to notice this change by the end of the first novel, Dies of Fire, with the climatic, if clumsy, battle off of Highway 20. There are no firearms or explosives, of course. Instead, we have an army in makeshift armor raided from the Academy Sporting Goods, riding their bicycles up the highway to meet their enemies, and it's all fighting with crudely made swords, axes from Home Depot, and baseball bats liberated from high schools. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first battle engagement with the PPA. The people are fighting like us. Do you know how to fight with a sword? Neither do I. And how much chainmail armor do you have? Oh, you don't? Well, I hope the football gear you stole will stop the rebar that's about to hit you. The initial makeshift weapons and haphazard fighting techniques are overhauled by the various communities to operate in this new world by the time of the Protector's War 9 years later. The communities have retro-engineered the carcass of the industrial age. Spring steel from vehicles have been cannibalized to fashion weapons and armor. Yew becomes a popular tree, as they're perfect for making longbows. Subsistence farming replaces Monsanto's single crop plantations. For the survivors, they feel as though they're stuck in Ren Fair and they can't find the exit. And with that, we also see how people adapt. Most of the characters in the Protector's War, who were adults at the time of the change, have some level of post-trauma, even years on. They still think in terms of the old world. Maybe they even dream of the world before. Like perhaps they still have anxiety dreams about being stuck in traffic, knowing that they're late for a meeting. Meanwhile, the ones who are children at the time of the change have accepted this new reality with relative ease. We see this with Astrid Larson and Eilir Mackenzie, who are the same age, now in their mid-20s. They were both Tolkien nerds before the change, and now they're leaders of the Dunedain Rangers, who have their base of operations at Silver Falls State Park. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. If these rangers sound familiar to you, do a wiki on Lord of the Rings. Yeah, they've gone full-on Middle-earth, selling their services to protect caravans from bandits, speaking Elvish, and invoking spirits. I would say that they were LARPing, but here there is no play acting. The world is like Lord of the Rings. I like how Stirling will occasionally pull us from the land of elves and rangers as they pass by the artifacts of the old world, like a minivan or a Joe's Crab Shack, providing the jarring contrast from our world to theirs. And while the young adults have accepted this new world readily enough, it is the children born shortly before or after the change, who see the post-change world as completely natural. In the follow-up novels like The Sunrise Land set in 2020, we're introduced to the descendants, who see what is odd is not their world, but rather it is the old people talking crazy shit like those old rusting husks once raced down the crumbling highways at 90 miles per hour. How they used to fly miles up in the sky in gigantic jet planes. How music and moving images could be seen and heard from thousands of miles away on glass screens, and how some people even went to the moon. I also love how Stirling throws in an occasional pop cultural reference from our world and how it adapted to the post-change world. Specifically, I'm thinking of Survivor's Eye of the Tiger being all the rage with the young knights. Stirling did something remarkable in that he used the catastrophic events of the change to bring us postmodern, sedentary screen monkeys into a completely different world. I mean, imagine it. It's 1998, you're driving home from classes and you're listening to a Radiohead CD because it's 1998 and OK Computer is a great album, but actually you're listening to Tub Thumping on the radio, but you're not going to admit that. All's right with the world when suddenly you momentarily feel the worst migraine you ever had. The car craps out at the same time, the music dies, and you have to push hard on the brakes as all the engines everywhere go silent. In that split second, the world as we know it, with our TVs, road trips, postmodern dread, and overprocessed meals, is taken away from us, and we're thrust into this new reality. But along with the unique scenario and genre twist, Stirling also managed not to dwell on the horror and depravity that most popocs and detopes fall into. It's easy for a mediocre creator to delve into disaster porn. Case in point, check out most of the corporate popocs streaming today. It takes true creativity and a good reading about people to write something that goes beyond the initial chaos and the barbarity of some. To be clear, Stirling didn't shy away from the brutal reality of the collapse itself. Most of the population dies in the first year or so due to starvation, and there are bandits abound. However, Stirling recognizes something that most popoc writers ignore, and that is most people don't turn into brutal savages once the lights go out. There's this trope in corporate-sponsored popocs that want you to accept the false premise that everyone outside of our heroes are monsters who want to take what you have. No doubt, predators, bandits, and asshats would be plentiful in a popoc. They certainly are all over in our tenuous society, as we see that with failed states and in Houston traffic. But the totality is more complicated. Humanity is more cooperative than vitriolic, not because we're naturally good, but because we want to survive. In a catastrophic scenario, most people, frightened as they are, actually seek out security and safety in numbers. We see this with the bear killers as they gather a community from the wanderers. We see this with Juniper McKenzie's clan, and we see this in Corvallis. To be sure, there are plenty of bad actors. And in Dies the Fire, white supremacists, bandits, and the PPA are all around, but they are outnumbered by sane and civilized communities. Some people will try to loaf off of others, but most are willing to go beyond their old comfort zones for a greater good, for the harvest, for the security for their family. In fact, Stirling presents a popoc world where people are finding community in a way that they never had back before the change. This kind of storytelling is rare, and the first Emberverse trilogy was one of the founding inspirations in me becoming a writer. There's a lot behind that, but that's a discussion for another time.
Mixtape Stories hopes you enjoyed this podcast. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. You can find out more about us on our website, mixtapestories.net. If you would like to submit a short story to be produced on this podcast, click on the submissions link at mixtapestories.net for more information.